Hey guys, it's Hayes with CheatSheetPros.com. Today is January 27th, 2022, and I'm going to make a quick video to show the people that are new to sports betting or new to Cheat Sheet Pros that are subscribing and signing up for sports betting items. So I'm going to show you what you get, kind of how the site works, what's going on. So right now, NBA and college hoops are the main two things that we're betting on day in and day out. Our sheets are posted in the morning, usually by 10 a.m. Central Time. I usually have it up between 8:30 and 9:30 a.m. and then I update it again in the afternoon, but the update is more for DFS purposes. So for this video, we're just going to talk about sports betting. I'm going to show you the information that we put at your fingertips using the NBA cheat sheet, and we're going to take a look at the college cheat sheet. Now, this is the sheet from last night on January 26th, and you can see I've got the ESPN scores over here on the side. So I'm going to go through and we're going to show you kind of what the sheet said or what it pointed to, and then kind of my thoughts looking back at the games. So if you want our model, a lot of people say, well, what does your model say? Because in my articles, I always write our model has, San Antonio by 6 or a total of 224 points. So people are like, where's that model? How do I see it? Well, the main model I put right up here at the top. And you can see when you flip through these games, the first thing you need to do when you download the sheet, click inside the bottom team. It's going to give you a drop-down menu and you can scroll through the games. But our main model projection is right here. So we have a lot of different models, which you can see down here, which they're addressed more in the tutorial. But for just basic purposes, our main model is right here. So this is the first thing that I look at when I go up to a game. Now, if you don't want to dig through stats and trends and all that good stuff, the one place you can look is just right here. This gives you our prediction based off the Vegas spread. Now, I will warn people, and I'll show you an example of yesterday. If significant changes has happened to one team or the other in the last 3 games, take this with a grain of salt because it does not factor in players ruled out, players ruled in. That's a whole nother video. So right here, if you want to take a look at it, you can see based on the spread, we have the San Antonio Spurs, a difference by 11, and then for the side, we lean under by 4 points. Now, what I recommend is look into games that have a difference of 6 or 7 or more points, and then make your determination based on that. So first thing I do in the morning is I flip down through every game. I look at all the differences of 6, 7, or more, and I write them down, and those are the games I'm going to watch throughout the day that I'm going to go back and I'm going to look into, and we're going to flip through some of these games, and I'm going to show you what the sheet said, what I thought, and then looking at the last 10 games. Now, another thing to pay attention to over here are your trends. So we've got your ATS records, home, away, overall for the season. We got your ATS overs, unders, differences between when they're at home and when they're on the road. Now look right here at the Spurs. The over-under is 16-7 when they're at home, but 9-14 on the road. That's something to pay attention to. So if our model says, hey, we're going over, but they have a significant trend the other way, take it with a grain of salt, investigate it a little bit, and make a decision. We also have the last 10 power rankings, and then we have our own perimeter and interior defensive rankings that I put up here just to keep an eye on. This is basically if you're looking at a lot of three-point player props. And then down here, we've got our stat ranks, which you typically see on any app that you open on your phone. It will show you each team's points per game, offensive efficiency, rebounds, turnovers, etc., etc. Well, I kept going and looking at the last 3 games, and so I went ahead and brought that in here on the side so we can also look at the last 3 games. Now, you can see there's a whole lot more information on here, but we're going to kind of stick to the basics. Now, if a player is ruled out and you want to know how this team does differently when they are on or off the court, I have a quick tutorial right down here. It says, quick tutorial, finding a player's on-off court numbers. And it's a free website you can go to, plug them in, take a look at it. It does take some time to look into, but I have a tutorial because that's one of the biggest questions that people ask me. So this is new in the last couple of weeks I'd added. So I brought in the last 10. I love looking at game logs. So I always look at the last 3 games, last 5 games for college, last 10 games for NBA. I want to see if these teams just played, if they're on the road, back-to-back, if they're on a stretch of home games, or whatnot. So you can see here what the record is over the last 10, their average points scored, average points allowed. We have the dates of the games, if they're home or road, who they played, if they won or lost, and the score. And then I put the margin in there and I color-coded it because I want to see who's winning, who's losing, and then I also put the total of the game because I want to see, is this team playing in a bunch of 220 and up games, and now this total suddenly 205, 210, 215, so it gives me kind of a feel for it. So this is the main thing if you're doing sports betting. Now, we also have other tabs you can see on here down at the bottom. Actually, you can't see that. Let me scroll it up. So we have other tabs here for DFS, DVP. We have different projections. We got tiers if you do tiers on DK. Player props, we look at the games side by side. And then we also have a player prop tab over the last 7, but that's getting into other things. So right now we're specifically talking about sports betting and what you get. So let's flip through some of these games and kind of show you what I saw. So when you're looking at this sheet, this is a lot of information. So what you need to do, look at our model and then determine, do I like that? Do I agree with it? But this is meant to point you in the direction of a game you like so you can investigate it and take a look at it. If you want to bet it blindly, you're welcome to. I never do. I spend a lot of time researching games, so anything I bet or post, I put on there. If I'm extremely busy at work and I get home and I have like 15 minutes, I'll flip through and I'll take the 3 highest different games, parlay them up, throw a unit on it, and be like, all right, let's go eat dinner and just see what happens just to get some action. So let's go ahead and take a look at some games yesterday. So this first one, Memphis and the San Antonio Spurs. Memphis was -4.5. Memphis and Charlotte are 2 teams I typically always bet, usually bet the over if I'm going to go with them. I did bet Memphis. I did not bet the over, though, because the Spurs have kind of been up and down. So when I'm looking at this sheet, what jumps out at me, Memphis lost by 13, won by 4, lost by 12, won by 13, lost by 27. So they've really kind of been up and down. But, you know, they're on the trend to go up. And then the total, the reason I stayed away from it is here you can see over the last 5 games, they've had 2 games at 195, 197, and then 2 games at 240 points. So they're all over the place right now. So without something that's consistent, I'm just going to stay away from that. I also, looking at the trends, nothing really jumped out at me, so that's something I was going to stay away from. And kind of the same thing with the Spurs on this side. They just played a 238 game, but then they've had some 214, some 219, a 195. So they're kind of all over the place. But over here, the Spurs, I mean, look at, they've lost a ton of games in 2 of the last 3. And what's crazy is they lost by 15, by 6, and then they beat Houston by 30. Well, Memphis is much stronger than Houston. So when I look up here at our model, it would say San Antonio by 11. So our model would say, hey, we think San Antonio is going to cover the spread by 11. And how we come up with that is we have the Spurs here. Our line would be Spurs -6, but they're getting 4.5. So that's roughly 10.5 rounded up. It's actually about 11 points. So this would lean to the Spurs. So one of the things to take a look at over here on the ATS trends, when I'm looking at it, I say, okay, this model likes the Spurs. What's the ATS look like? Well, Memphis is 31-18 against the spread, 15-11 at home, decent, that's about average. But on the road, they're 16-7. So since there is a significant trend the other way, I would say, hey, I'm going to fade the Spurs and just kind of stay away from it. Me personally, I always ride Memphis and Charlotte if I don't have anything else I like. And looking at the last 10 power rankings, we have 6 versus 21, so that's something to kind of keep an eye on. But let's go ahead and go down and take a look at the next game. So one of the other ones is Atlanta. So Sacramento is going to Atlanta. The 2 things that jump out, we have our cheat sheet power rankings. It's a custom formula I came up with to determine a team's power ranking over recent games. So we got 28th versus number 2. That jumps out at me. The last 10 power rankings, we got 30th versus 18. So Atlanta is significantly better, but they are laying a spread of 10. So what does our model say? If you don't do anything else, look right here. This is the first place you'll see. Okay, CheatSheetPros has Atlanta by 14, so that's 14 points better than the spread. So that should jump out at you. Bells and whistles go off like, okay, I'm going to look at this Atlanta game. Let me make sure Trae Young's playing. Let me see how they've done over recent games. That's one thing to look at. When it says lean over by 1, that's close enough. You know, if you like it, go with it. If not, throw it out the window. So this opened with a spread of 230. We projected it at 231.2, so 1 point's not enough for me to say, hey, this is a diehard play. You got to bet this, blah, blah, blah. So I'm also looking at the last 10 record, 2-8 versus 5-5. We got Atlanta laying 10. Our projected score was 127 to 103. So we had Atlanta -24. So our spread said, hey, the Hawks should be favored by 24 points. Now, that is a ridiculous number. I understand that. And you're never going to see a 24-point spread in the NBA. But what it is meant to do is just say, hey, we think Atlanta's going to win by a whole bunch of points. So lay the 10. You know, there's no chance here. We're going to take the Sacramento plus the 10 if we have a projected spread of 24. Now, in this game yesterday, it was 121 to 104, which we can see over here. 121-104, and we projected at 127-103. So we were pretty darn close on that game. So they end up winning by 17 points. So they covered the spread, so that was a good one for us. When I'm looking at this game and I'm looking at the trends, one thing that would jump out at me is Sacramento on the road is 8-13 ATS. So they're way upside down. So they don't cover as much on the road. Nothing really great on the Atlanta side. They're kind of so-so. If you were looking at the total, these teams are 25-24, 25-21. So they're, 50-55%. So nothing really jumps out at me there. But anytime you want to bet a Sacramento over, I will never tell you no because they play no defense and they can usually score a ton of points. But this is one where if you're flipping through the game, you see, hey, they have Atlanta by 14. Let me look into this game. What do they think the spread should be? We think it should be 24. I'm laying 10. Boom, let's go with it. Now, also, if you want to investigate this game, the first thing I do is look at the recent game logs. So let's look right here at, that reached out and grabbed that. So let's look right here at Sacramento. So the last 4 games, loss. Now, Boston and Milwaukee are good teams. Detroit and Houston are not. So they lost by 53, 6, 2, and 6. So they played some close games here, and then they got absolutely crushed. So you can also see these other ones. They had a 15-point loss, a 10-point loss. So they've had some significant losses. But when they're losing by 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points to teams that aren't really good, then these better teams who are ranked higher in the power rankings, like 2nd and 18th, should be able to cover that spread. So that's one of the games that did jump out at me. Also, looking over here at the rankings, you can see Sacramento's 13th in points per game. Over the last 3, they're 11th, so they're staying about the same, not a big change. Atlanta is 7th on the season, but they're up to 2nd, which Trae Young was playing really well, so they were doing a lot better. So if you look at the last 4 games, Sacramento, 4 losses, 2 home, 2 road, and then Atlanta, 4 straight wins, beating Milwaukee, Minnesota, Miami, and Charlotte, 4 good teams. And they won 22, 2, 12, and 7. So they've won by some significant points in a couple of those. So that is one thing to look at. So when you flip to this, it should be bells and whistles going off in your head. Now, I spent a lot of time on that game. I do apologize, but let's go ahead and take a look at Chicago. So this is one game that I wanted to go ahead and take a look at. Now, when you glance at this, it's going to say Toronto by 10. Boom, bells and whistles. This is a game we want to look at. Under by 5. It's not the 6 or 7, but some people go by 4 or 5, and if you want to look into that, you're welcome to. I typically try to stay away from unders because I always get bad beated on them. So anyways, over here looking at the sides, the ATS over under, nothing really jumps out at me. ATS on the sides. Both teams are good at their location. You can see Chicago's 14-8 ATS at home. Toronto 11-8 ATS on the road. So we had a projected line of -6, but what is the big red flag that should jump out at you in this game? So there have been significant changes. So this is one I just crossed off and moved on. Now, the reason I did that is Zach LaVine recently just came back. I think this might have been his 2nd game back. He hasn't been back that long. And then Van Vliet was ruled out. So he was out on the other side. So the Bulls were getting a star player back and Toronto was losing one. So that would flip it to me and say, hey, they have Toronto -6, but they're missing their best player. So you could either look into Van Vliet's on-off the court numbers and then compare it to LaVine's on-off the court numbers and make a determination, or just say, hey, there's enough changes in this game that I'm going to stay away from it. Now, I would lean Chicago with the small 3.5-point spread. They're great ATS trends at home, playing at home with LaVine, DeRozan, and Vooch all back in the lineup, and the other team missing one of their top scorers. That's personally how I would look at that. Now, the final ended up down here. We can see Bulls end up winning 111-105. We were close to the total. We just had the wrong team on here. So we had 110-104 Toronto. So we were on the wrong side. But again, that is some significant information that would change things, so that's something you would want to take a look at. Which you can tell when Levine was out, look at some of these games. Lost by 42, 26, 14, 13, and then turn around, and then they won by 1. And I think he was back 1 or 2 games in here. So that's one I would kind of throw out the window that has significant pieces. Going down to the next game is going to be Brooklyn and Denver. So this is one of the games I really liked, and it had nothing to do with the sheet. So when I flipped through the games yesterday morning, I looked at this. I said, okay, Denver by 1, over by 3, move on. You know, there's nothing there that jumps out at me on this sheet. But some of the other stuff I watched kind of pulled me back into the Denver game. One of the particular things is I watch percentage of bets, money, I watch line movements. And throughout the day, what I noticed after lunch is this line opened at pick. It moved to 2.5 in favor of Denver, and then there was 98% of the cash on Denver. So that was kind of a little red flag for me that pops up. And I said, all right, I'm going to go back and look at this game. So when I come back and look at it, the first thing that jumps out, okay, Denver's won 3 of the last 4 games right here by 5, 6, lost by 4, 2. So they've been winning games, but winning close games. Detroit's not really a superior team. They got killed by Utah. I don't know what happened there, but prior to that, they won by 37 and 32 points against the Lakers in Portland. So they've been winning some games. So you can see a good stretch of wins here, some significant wins. Every now and then, you know, they're going to have a bad get ripped up. And then our model has, it should be Denver -3. Well, the line opened at pick, and it moved closer to our model of Denver -2.5. So that is something that kind of jumped out at me. And then when I saw the 98% of cash, I said, hey, I'm going to ride this. I already kind of like it. That's something that jumps out at me. And then when I was looking at this, okay, Brooklyn, they've lost their last 2 games by double digits, by 10 and 11 points. So we got 2 recent wins, 2 recent losses, spread cash going to Denver. That's something that I want to go ahead and take a look at. And then one of the ATS trends over here, which is kind of interesting, Brooklyn at home is 5-18 against the spread. So they are awful at covering the spread at home, and I have no idea why that is. But looking at Denver, they're not that great. Oh, I deleted something there. They're not that great regardless, but they are 7-3 in the last 10 and 12-12 straight up on the road. So that's something I would want to take a look at. If I just want to see the raw points per game, we got 18 versus 5 on the season. Brooklyn slid back to number 8, but Denver slid up to number 5 over the last 3. So they're both in the same range, 5th and 8 over the last 3 games. And then see defensive points per game. They're both kind of in about that same range as well. Did I just delete that again? So we have 22 and 25. So kind of in that same range. So tight game, a lot of cash, a lot of movement. 2 recent wins, 2 recent losses. That's something that I leaned over to Denver. So Denver was one of the ones I threw a unit on last night at the last minute after seeing the money move throughout the day. One of the other ones, let me see if the Cleveland one's on here. Oh, I guess I better show you the result. What happened in that game? I know Denver covered. Denver. Here you are. So Denver won 124 to 118. So they ended up winning by 6. So Vegas projected a tight game. We projected a tight game with Denver winning by 3. Denver ended up winning by 6. It went over the total. It opened at 221.5. We had 224, so we had a slight lean to the over. Looking at the trend, neither team is really great. ATS over or under. So nothing really jumps there, but anytime I get something that points to the over, if the teams have been scoring a lot of points, I will go with it. So here we'd be looking like we need 222. Well, they've played 215, 228, 240, 258, 227, 229, 248. So they've been going over that a lot. So that is one you could lean to the over. And Brooklyn's all over the place. 202, then 260, then 219, then 237. So look at the trends, look at the recent games, make a decision. Flipping over here to this next game, we got Milwaukee and Cleveland. So I don't remember a lot of significant information on this one yesterday. And let's see, Cleveland won 115 to 99. So we had Milwaukee should be favored by 6. They were favored by 4. Difference of 2 points, so not enough to make a play. Again, remember, we're looking at a difference of 6 to 7 points. And then you want to look at that game. I wouldn't blindly bet it, but I would look at it. But occasionally you'll see me post like, hey, games with a difference of 7 last night went 9-1. I don't go back and look at that every day, but I try to a couple of times a week. So when you're looking at this, the side, we're saying Milwaukee -6. They're laying 4. You know, that's not enough for me, so I'm going to go ahead and fade that. Now, if you're looking at totals, this says lean under by 6. So that would kind of jump out at me. So the total was 219. We had 213, so a difference of 6. So we want to jump over and look at the trends. So you can see both of these teams are monster ATS underplays. So Milwaukee is 28-21 for the under, and then Cleveland is 29-18 for the under. And then at home, they're a 15-7 underplay. So those are huge under trends. The last 2 games Cleveland played, 188, 181. And then over here, Milwaukee just played a shootout, but it was Sacramento, so I crossed that one out the window because they don't play any defense. Prior to that, they played Chicago with 184. So we've got room for an under here. Now, they do have some 240 games, but then they've got a string of 199, 217, 202. So this is one you could lean to an under. Again, I try not to bet unders unless I'm really having a degen day and want to get some action. But this is one where a difference of 6 we would lean under. And the final was 214. It slid under. We had it at 213.1. It ended at 214. Either way, it was about 5 points under the total. So that's one that would have jumped out that was a difference. Let's go ahead and take a look at one more game. Sure, that was a crazy game. I'm just going to skip over that one. They scored like 80 points in that game. So the Phoenix-Utah game. So this is one that kind of jumped out at me. So you look here, you got Phoenix by 4. It's not 6 or 7 points, but the under is. So we got lean under by 8. So again, I can't stress this enough. If you don't want to look at anything, just look at this. If it's a difference of 6, 7, 8 or more, earmark it as, hey, this is a game that we want to take a look at. So Phoenix is a game that I wanted to play, and it's simply just look right here. Whoops, I keep grabbing stuff and letting go of it. So look at this. So they're 9-1 in their last 10 games straight up, and look at their wins. 6, 10, 8, 14, 27, 18. I mean, they're great. They're phenomenal. Phoenix is killing it. They're red hot right now. Let's look at Utah and see how they're doing. Well, they're 2-8 in their last 10 games, so they've got loss, loss, win against Detroit, loss to Houston, loss, win, loss, 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 loss. And look at this string of losses. Lost by 14, 12, 10, 20, 6, 5, 2, and 6. So they're getting better, but not quite there. So Phoenix is a game. Our line, we had 110, 111, whatever you want to do with the 0.5 to 105, 106. Our line was Phoenix -5. They were laying 1.5. It was only a difference of 4, but after looking at just the last 10 games, the 9-1 versus 2-8, we got a good likelihood that Phoenix is going to win that game, and we're just saying, hey, they got to win by 2. That shouldn't be too hard, and they end up winning 105-97. So we had them winning by 5. They end up winning by 8. So it wasn't too bad. Now, if you're looking at the differences, you see lean under by 8. 223 is quite a bit for a game with Utah and Phoenix in it. So just past experience, that kind of jumps out at me as that would be kind of an underplay. We've got it at 216, 215.9. We're going to round it up to 216. So this is a significant difference that should jump out at you and say, hey, I want to look into this. Is anyone out? What have they done in recent games? How many games has each team been under this 223.5? Well, we have for Phoenix 224. So over by a half a point, then we got under, under, over, over, under, 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 under. So a lot of unders for Phoenix, and then when we go over here and we look at this one, it's over by a half, and then under, under, over, under, over, under. So a lot of overs and unders. So we go ahead and we take a look at the trends here, and they're kind of back and forth. We got one team that trends to the under, one team that trends to the over on the home. So with this one, it's a difference enough with the model. You could go with an under here, and it ended at 105-97, so 202. So it was significantly under. I don't know what the line did throughout the day as far as moving, but that's a rough idea of what you're looking at for NBA. This is the NBA bet tab. So when you open up the NBA sheet, you can flip through every game on the slate for the day. You can see every team's last 10 games. You can see what our model says. We give you a projection. We put all the trends in there, the defense, the power rankings. So you can spend as much time investigating this as you want, or you can spend the least amount of time and just look at plays with the differences. Now for college hoops, let me go ahead and show you what we got there. So our college hoops betting sheet, it's real similar to what we got, but with so many teams. Our original sheet was this at the beginning of the year, so a lot of the same stats, same numbers. We got all the trends, the over-under, the power rankings, the shooting, all that good stuff. And then we got our different power rankings, and then we pulled in the KenPom ranks. And then you've got the average of all of our models and lines. We give you a projected score, we give you an average line, we give you the KenPom rankings, but this is one where you got to click in and pick both teams. And some of the feedback I got is like, I would love to see all the games on one sheet. So then we flipped it over and I said, okay, well, I don't want to get rid of this because I use it a lot, but let me flip over here to this tab. So this tab is going to show us, and the games are ranked in order of the highest ranked team. So top 25 games are going to go to the top. You're going to see those first because that's what everybody is focused on. So you can flip down here and you can see, I think we got about 60 games in here right now. And this is the sheet for today. And so when I posted the bets for today, this is how I find them. I start off using this sheet. So Gonzaga, they're rated number 1 by KenPom, so they go to the top of the list. You can see the game, the date, the time. You can see their straight up record. You can see ATS, percentage, over under trends, percentage. I highlight green for the ones that are over 60, red if it's under, I think, 40. And then you can see the Vegas total, what it opened at, what it is now, side spread. The place I pull it, they don't put spaces between everything. So if you see something a little wacky like a half and the game's minus 20.5, they just didn't put a space in there, and so it didn't grab enough characters. But just look past it. I think it's like less than 3% of the total numbers. And then you can see we have 3 models for college games. We use Kyle's line. We use the cheat sheet line, which is the one that I came up with. And then I pulled in the KenPom one. It's not exactly what KenPom has because he uses a percentage for the home team advantage. So I use a generic 2.5 to 3.5 points depending upon the team, just to give you a ballpark of where KenPom's running. And then an average of all 3 of these lines together. So the first thing I do when I'm looking at college hoops is I look at this line and I look at the average. So Gonzaga, you know, it's a huge spread. We flip down here. We get Purdue minus 2.5. We got a minus 6. That's not big enough for me. 16.5 to 20. No, I'd look into it. We have a minus 11, minus 10.8. That's pretty close. 6 to 8. So the first one that jumps out is Wisconsin, minus 7.5. We got it at minus 16. And I just look to see if one model is significantly different or if they're all 3 over that spread. So in this case, they are. So this is a game that I would mark and say, hey, I'm going to look into Wisconsin, Nebraska. And I did. I eventually crossed it off. But that is a game that I was interested in. St. Mary's, San Francisco, I'm really excited to see this game. St. Mary's, 65% ATS. San Francisco's a great team. They're playing at home, but they're 33% ATS. But our models, we have it pretty close in a tight game, so ultimately I crossed that off. Down here, like however you say it, Chicago, minus 6. We got minus 12.9, so minus 13. So that's a 7-point difference. So that's one game that I did look into. UAB was the first game that I fell in love with when I was looking at these. So we have UAB, Western Kentucky. So we got number 40 versus number 122, 16-4 versus 10-9. They're both in the Conference USA. UAB is 13-5 ATS, 72%. That is phenomenal. They're only laying 4. And then Kyle's got it at almost 9. We got it at 13. KenPom has it about 8. So an average of about minus 10. So that's a significant enough difference that I said, hey, I like UAB over Western Kentucky. So that was one of the plays that I had posted tonight. But again, just look at these two. If you get a difference of, you know, anywhere from 5 to 10, earmark that game and go look into it. Now, when I do go look into these games, one of the things that I do, and I'll go ahead and show you real quick. Here, let me go ahead and close this. Go ahead and close the NBA sheet. We've looked at that. So I like to look at the recent games. So let me look at, let me see, college hoops scoreboard. So I pull up the college hoops scoreboard for ESPN, and then I'll flip down and go through the games. So for example, UAB was one of the first ones. I just click up here. I type UAB. I wait for it to come up, and it brings up all the UAB teams. So NCAA men's, That's the one we want to see. We pull it up. We are going to click on their schedule, and we are going to take a look at this. Now, let me slide it over here so we can get both of them in here. Okay, so now UAB is playing Western Kentucky. I'm going to right-click, open link in new window, and I'm just going to pull it up here so we can look at them side by side, and I'll show you some of the stuff that jumps out at me. So the first thing is I look at my college hoops. If I see our model is different than Vegas, that's a game I want to go look into. Now, when I'm looking at this, let me go ahead and take a screenshot of it so we can see kind of what jumps out, and I can write on this for you and blow it up. So we're going to blow this up. Let me make it a little bit bigger. Woo. All right. I think that's big enough. All right, so when I'm looking at this game, one of the things that jumps out at me is we have some common opponents here. So we have Florida Atlantic, Florida International, and both teams have played them. I'm looking. They've both played North Texas. There's another one. They both played Rice. There's another one. So this is a good one because we have two teams in the same conference with a lot of common opponents. So once I find the games that pop on the sheet, I'm going to come over here and start looking at game logs. Once I narrow down the ones I want to play, then I go look at Vegas money, and if there's a lot of money moving to one side, I'll go look at that game and say, what's our model think? Why is the money going here? And investigate it. So looking at UAB, they beat Florida Atlantic by 11, and then Florida Atlantic beat Western Kentucky by 11. Okay, so that's a plus over here for UAB. Florida International, they absolutely crushed 84-56. Florida International over here squeaked by them. They played a tight game, but UAB crushed them, so that's a plus over here for them. Rice, they end up losing to 85-80, and they end up beating Rice. So this is a one-off game that I'm going to, take with a grain of salt. North Texas is a decent team. UAB beat them 69-63, and then North Texas over here, they lost 65-60. So these two teams are not equal. UAB is clearly the better team, but college kids, when they go on the road, they have a lot of different games, so that's something to keep in mind. But on this, if the spread was 8, 9, or 10, I would probably stay away from it. But it opened at 1. It moved out to 3 or 4 real quick. I think I got it at 3 this morning. But UAB -3 on the road. And then I'll also go back and look and say, okay, look at the road games and look at the home games. So those are all road games. So Western Kentucky at home, they played a decent game against North Texas. That was good. And then they beat Rice. I don't know if Rice is any good. And then they did get a win against Florida International. So they've played 3 good games at home. So that's something that you should take into your decision. And then on the road, they beat La Tech. They lost to Rice. They beat North Texas on the road. So I think 4 is a good spread. I lean UAB there, but that's one of the things that I do to look at the sheet. So if you're coming from a sports betting perspective, that's what we look at. I'm not going to break out all the NFL sheets and go over those just simply because NFL's almost over. We have 2 games this weekend, 1 Super Bowl game, but we do have the NFL sheet posted, and it's got the same thing, models, projections, all that good stuff. And then when we get into baseball, we'll go over that. But that's kind of what you get from a sports betting side with Cheat Sheet Pros. Again, you can try these sheets for free on Thursdays in our Facebook group. We have 2 Facebook groups. We have a free one, and then we have a premium group. The premium group, it's the cheapest group you will ever find. We have a Facebook chat, a premium group. The sheets are posted in there twice a day, every day. We have a chat where people post plays all day long. But yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. I'm going to upload this video, throw it on the site so you guys can take a look at it, see what you think. And as always, people use the sheets better than I do. I go through, I find some plays. There are some days where I might not make any bets for 3 or 4 days, but other people are like, hey, I found this process, and they share it in the chat, and they say, hey, I found this play on the sheet and whatnot. So it's a really good group. So anyways, that's what you get with us. You want to give us a shot? We'd love to see you.